Hello everyone, what's going on? 72 hours, 43 minutes and 50 seconds. What's that since, Shreyas? Why have I mentioned that?
72 hours. Our last pre-season game.
Last time I went live on Friday, so I've not been live for 3 days now, technically. I don't think it feels very, very bizarre to me at the moment. And for people who have watched, if you're watching now, or if you've been waiting for a bit and you're watching later, whatever it is, the situation, if you're wondering why it's slightly different setup or whatever it is, or why we're late, basically the internet has completely shut down in my whole area. So obviously, me or Sam, the ones who usually host, and we have all the graphics, etc., etc., etc. And Trez has to do a crash course within half an hour to set everything up. So that's why we're a little bit late. So apologies about that, but the show must go on. And we're here to discuss a lot of stuff today. Regardless, whatever the situation is, we are here and we're going to talk about the same things, just a slightly different setup. Now, we're going to talk mainly, Shreyas, about the midfield situation. Zubimendi, Rabiot, Amrabat, Fofana, Ugarte. Midfield mayhem is what I've titled the show. But we've also had an article come out. I don't know if you've seen it from your boy, David De Gea, through The Athletic. There's some interesting quotes from there. There's an update on Jadon Sancho, and there's an update on your boy as well in Facundo Pellistri. So we're gonna dive into that also. If you are watching live right now, make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe to Real Red Talk. Trez, if you could possibly keep an eye on that chat for me, that'd be absolutely amazing. Now, first and foremost, how are you? Are you stressed?
A little stressed regarding how our midfield situation is right now looking, because it looks like we're getting linked to completely different names, completely new names, and at times players that we've not really even heard of that much, and suddenly it looks like we are very, very close to actually signing these guys, or we have a great personal term. So it looks pretty chaotic at times when you look at it from a third party perspective, that it just doesn't know from which perspective we are actually going to be looking into this midfield situation. But it's also good, you can look at it from a positive side as well, that you've got alternatives to actually look into, that if not this one, then you've got this another person who can come in, or another person who can come in. So it's a good position to be in that perspective. But I think once we actually sign just at least even one midfielder, it will calm a lot of nerves down, that you've got someone in who can actually be a starter for us moving into next season.
Well, the whole purpose of the show today is to discuss the prototype of what kind of midfielder we need, or what you think we need, whether that's you guys watching or Shreyas himself. Now, the most recent update, and the first player we're going to go to is Zubimendi, and quite a few outlets have reported this. So Manchester United have added Martin Zubimendi to their list of midfield targets. He has a £50 million release clause, which I'm sure you're aware of yourself. But someone in Zubimendi, Shreyas, is someone who's a deep line playmaker, bit of the rhythm setter, your Rodri kind of type, very tidy on the ball, known for his tactical intelligence and these kind of things. So that's the type of player you're going to get in him, that the typical Spanish six, if you will. Do we need that, or do you perform? And again, we're going to discuss the other targets, so try not to go into them. But what would he bring that you like, I suppose?
I think he brings a lot of, I would say, composure on the ball. I think he is someone who can be very good in a possession-based team, like teams that, want to dictate possession, teams that, want to be very active on the ball, and, that breaking the line sort of midfielder who likes to, just distribute the ball forward. I think he's that, that sort of a mold of a midfielder. I think if he does come in, once again, he fits very, very nicely into this setup, because once again, if you're going to be going for a high pressing, possession based type of football sort of system, then you need those sort of players who are very good at keeping, at looking after the ball, keeping hold of the ball, and actually, making the right decision at the right time whenever space actually opens up in midfield. And at the same time, he's very defensively sound. He's able to hold the midfield line quite well. And as a lone six, he's someone who has the agility and mobility to actually, function as a lone six in a system. Because if you look at it from, the players that we have right now, Casemiro as a lone six cannot do the job. He doesn't have the mobility, he doesn't have the agility to actually, cover that much ground, especially against, 2 to 3 runners when we are being hit on a counter attack. Zubimendi, on the other hand, he's got more agility. I think he's got much better positional awareness at times, because one thing with him is he's not going to be someone who's going to be progressing forward into the attack. Even when you're pushing forward, he's someone who likes to sit back. He's not that sort of an offensive midfielder or that sort of a box-to-box midfielder. He's a pure six when you look at him. He's not that hybrid sort of a midfielder like Ugarte is, or even Mainoo is, that can function as a 6 or an 8. He's a pure 6 whenever you actually go to use him. And I think with the age profile that he is at, and I would say with the price at which that he would be available, I think he's a good buy, considering we've got a tight budget as well. And if he does come in, can challenge for that starting position alongside if Casemiro ends up staying, could be a good competition.
Would he suit United's style though, if we're set to believe that it's going to be a little bit chaotic, very direct, very attacking, high pressing? Does he suit that, or does more of a ball winner like an N'Golo Kante suit our style of play?
I think he does fit into that mold, because for ball recoveries, I think he's top 5 in La Liga last season. And apart from that as well, I think if you're not going to be playing a possession style based of football, or if you're not going to be playing football which is good at the eye, if you're going to be looking at once again that high pressing, very chaotic, like no control, and just pushing every single midfielder and every single attacker on the ball, when you're not in possession, just trying to get a coordinated press going, that's not that sort of midfielder that we should be going for if we are going to be sticking to that system. If we are going to be shifting from it a bit, try to get a little more control in, try and calm things down a bit in midfield, get some stability in, then perhaps we will be able... You want Zubimendi by the looks of it.
Oh yeah, well apparently I've not even got a choice in the matter. It's like, yeah, you're gonna have him. Every time I do that now, every time I like a player, if I'm on this setup, I'm just gonna go like that. And hopefully I don't do it now. See what I mean? And the reason why I ask it, ball recoveries, I agree. The metrics don't lie with that. I've seen the statistics. I get what you're saying. It's the ground coverage. So if you watch us last season, the amount of ground the 6 has got to... You've seen it with Casemiro. It looks like a man on an island, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it all depends on what kind of play they're going to implement, what style, and that's kind of yet to be seen. And only the coaches, truly, and the manager himself will know that. But we'll talk about another target, because there's quite a few to get into. Adrian Rabiot is another one. He's a little bit different, a player that we've apparently appreciated for time. We've seen all these things before. Not as advanced as certain journalists are reporting. You've got his wages that will be significantly high, but there'll be no transfer fee. He's a left footer, so he brings that balance as well. But again, he's one who's not... You wouldn't have him as your marquee signing, would you?
No, not at all.
Is that more of like a depth option?
Exactly. If you're going to be going in for Rabiot, you need to be sure that you're looking at him as a bench option, or at max you'll be looking at him to actually start league games, or at max get 25 to 30 appearances a season. You can't bank on him to be a starting 11 player for you moving into next season, because I think he's 29 or 30 around that sort of an age.
You're right.
So if you go in for him, looking at him that he's going to be a starter, it's going to be again a situation where 2 years down the line we'll have to be looking to replace him with another young midfielder or another midfielder. If we do go in for him, we need to make sure that he's a bench option, because I think as a bench option he does offer you a lot more quality than what McTominay could offer, or what Eriksen at this age would offer, because he's very good on the ball. I think he having that versatility that he can play pretty much any position in midfield at this point. He's been very versatile throughout the course of his career. But I think for the midfielder that we are going for, and with the sort of image that Ineos have been presenting in this transfer window, they want to go in for someone young. They want to go in for a profile who they can build the team around with. And if you look at every single signing that Ineos have made right now, they made it with the thought that it is going to be a 5-year project or 6-year project with this player, whether it's Xerxes, whether it's Euro, if it is Delict. Every single player we're going in for, it looks like they're looking at it from with the bigger picture in mind. And in that aspect, Euro doesn't fit when it comes to a starting 11 spot. As a bench option, surely, but not as a starting 11 option.
Euro, did you say? Do you mean Rabiot?
I said Euro fits because he's 18. Rabiot doesn't because he's... You cannot You can't expect him to be playing at the top level as a starting choice when he's 33 or 34 years old.
Yeah, agreed. I think the next player comes into a similar category. But before I get into that, one of the players on the list has just been some news breaking. I'm not sure if you're able to check it now.
Okay.
I'm unable to do it because of the setup, like we discussed at the start. Just double check on Twitter. There's some news on Fofana that's just broke. And we'll get into Fofana in a moment. But the next player I wanted to discuss was Sofyan Amrabat.
We've officially joined the race to sign Yusuf Fofana, and we are fighting Atletico Madrid and AC Milan alongside us. And the asking price for Fofana is 32 to 34 million.
Okay, so it's more than what initially people was reporting. The initial one was like 20 million euros.
Yeah.
So 25, something along the lines of that. So that's interesting. Obviously, because there's competition there, they're going to push the price up. But we'll talk about him in a moment. The next on the list was Sofyan Amrabat. And we knew from Fabrizio Romano that not willing to pay what we had initially agreed, or what Murtar and Richard Arnold had initially agreed with the player. So they want to renegotiate that. I'm not sure for how much. But again, he falls into the same category as what Rabiot does, right?
Yeah, I think he does. Once again, like we've been mentioning for some time, I think in the last few games of the season he did redeem himself. He was brilliant in the cup final against City. He was brilliant in the final few games of the season as well. Was a breath of fresh air in that midfield. Brought a lot of energy in. Was actually able to play quite flawlessly alongside Mainoo as well, and looked to bring a lot more composure and stability to that midfield. And stability is something that we needed in that midfield throughout the course of that season. So I think once again, as a bench option, he can be very decent, and I think he would be a much safer bet as well, because he's already been at United for one season, and he has had some very good, he's made some very good glimpses, and when it mattered the most, he stepped up to the plate as well against City in the final. Yeah. So if you do go in for him as a bench option, or probably as a fighting option for that starting position as well, I think he can be decent. I think it's just I think the biggest problem that United have with the deal is just the price. Apart from that, I really don't see any other problem, because United want to get it done at around 13 to 14 million. Fiorentina sticking to, I think, a release clause or something of around 20 million. So I think that's the only holdup. But as a player, I would slightly lean more in favor of him. Like if it was between him and Rabiot, I would be more in favor of Amrabat, just because I think he'll be a much safer bet. And right now, United have to make safer bets.
Keep that in mind, because we're going to circle back to that towards the end in terms of specifics if we want. Let's talk about Fofana then. A lot of reports that we started discussions with his agents, as you've just seen there. They want 30 million euros, was it? That's what we reported, and you've got a couple of other clubs that are interested. 1 year left on his deal. French international, went to the Euros with him, played a couple of minutes, I believe. Usually plays as a box-to-box midfielder with primarily defensive duties, but can do both sides of the game. Physical strength, stamina, ability to press opponents and win the ball back, which all sounds good. Again, does that dynamic work more with Kobbie than a Zubimendi? What bracket does he fall in for you personally?
I think once again, he's a hybrid midfielder, and just like Kobbie Mainoo is, I think in this system that we are playing, he can fit into it, because what this team right now needs the most is someone who can complement Mainoo in that double pivot. That's what this team actually needs right now, because if you look into it, as if like going into next season, Bruno is definitely going to be starting in that midfield. There is no question about it. Mainoo is going to be starting in that midfield as well. No question about it. There's only that partner for Mainoo. That's the only question mark in that midfield right now. And that part can be filled in by a pure six. Someone who is very competent on the ball. Someone who doesn't really hesitate in taking on players when it comes to 1v1s and can track midfield runners at the same time. That position can also be filled by a hybrid midfielder who can switch on and switch off whenever the situation presents itself, that if you have to be playing a bit on the back foot, that player is defensively sound enough to actually do a job as a six. And at the same time, if you want to progress more forward, you want to play more positive and on the front foot, that player also has the capacity and the intellect to actually be progressing forward and be able to break defensive lines. That's the sort of midfielder Mainoo actually needs right now, because Mainoo is very good at driving the ball forward. Mainoo is very good at actually progressing through the lines. What we need right now in this team alongside Mainoo is someone who can distribute the ball well enough, can take the ball off the back four and actually, be able to link Mainoo and Bruno. That's the sort of midfielder we need.
But I don't think there is personally a perfect option at the minute for me personally. I mean, even the other one on the list, Ugarte, who's like the main target at the minute, that's a deal that could be done for around 38 million. But then PSG are going to go and use them funds to buy João Neves, who
for
could
me,
be
he
like
was the perfect choice. For me, he was the perfect choice.
I like Neves, but even Neves I don't think is a pure six.
No,
he's another one who's
a hybrid. Yeah,
he does both. So in actual fact, there isn't a perfect replacement who does both sides. I mean, Fofana's good at both sides, like to a decent level, but I'm talking like an expert, like a Rodri in that position. I don't think there is one on the market at the moment.
No.
I like what I see in Ugarte personally.
Yeah.
Sometimes he can overdo it. He can, jump to a tackle, lose control a little bit, which in our system can work to our strengths, but also can be a depth to the way we play at the same time. And he covers a lot more ground than someone like a Zubimendi. But then you lose control in that. So that we spoke about each individual player. What is the not the perfect balance, because it's not really perfect. I just spoke about the imperfections. But for you, just your opinion individually, out of a list of players, who would you go and get as the starting six alongside Kobbie, Mainoo, and then give me one depth signing as well?
Personally, I would go for Ugarte. I think we need that aggression. I think that midfield demands aggression, and at the same time, I think that partner for Mainoo, he needs to be very rough and very tough as well, because he needs someone who can be physical enough to actually get stuck in, physically enough to actually be able to dictate his presence in the midfield as well. That's what Mainoo needs. Not that Mainoo cannot impose himself in the midfield. He very well can. He has the structure for it, but there is still a lot of development left in him. There is still a lot more to Kobbie's game that needs to be developed. I think he needs someone alongside him that can make that process a bit easier by actually, imposing himself physically in the midfield. And in the Premier League, we've seen it on multiple occasions that, you need that sort of physical specimen in the midfield to, actually complement a, natural, ball winner or a natural technical player on the, in the midfield. So for that reason, I would personally go in for Ugarte. But if it's not Ugarte, my second option would be Zubimendi, because I just want someone who is primarily a 6 in that midfield. We've had primary 8s, so, on many occasions in that midfield. We need someone who's primarily a 6 and can do just a good job, just as much of a good job, progressing forward as an 8 as well. So for me, it would be Ugarte and then Zubimendi.
I think Ugarte strikes me as a Ten Hag player. You want to look at Lisandro, that kind of. And Anthony, to a certain extent, the South American spirit, like the fight, hunger, you leave it all on the pitch. Ugarte does strike me as that type of guy.
Yeah.
And obviously, the fighting mentality that comes with him. But I also think, depth-wise, I wouldn't say no to any of them. I like Amrabat, what he did at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I like Rabiot, what I've seen in international tournaments.
Yeah, of course.
And I like Fofana from bits that I've seen. Fofana's the one out of them all that I've seen the least. I haven't seen a lot of him. So I do need to see more of him, because I don't want him to be. Do you remember Bakayoko, who Chelsea signed from Monaco?
Yeah.
I don't want him to be another one of them. Like just more hype than it's actually worth. But from bits I've seen, he's okay. But I do think they need to get this decision on the midfield correct, the balance.
They have to.
They need to get that perfect, whichever way they go with it. But I'd love to know what everyone else is thinking. If you're watching live or if you're watching later on, let us know your thoughts on the midfield situation. Who do you bring in? Who do you prioritise as the main target? And then who do you choose as the depth options as well? Is that your final say? You can't have Zubimendi as well, because that's a bit spoiled. So Ugarte,
I think for depth, for me, depth, it would be Amrabat. I would prefer Amrabat over anyone right now for depth, because he's a safer bet. And in the first window for Ineos itself, I don't think that they'll be making risk signings again and again and again. Xerxes is a risk. I'm absolutely fascinated by the type of player he is and what he can bring to the team, but he is still a risk. Lenny Yoro has an immense ceiling, can be one of the best centre-backs in the future, in the European scene. But once again, he is a gamble too. I don't think that, Ineos would be going in for another... Especially for a backup, I don't think that they'll be going in for another young player and splashing around 40 to 50 million for that player. I think they'll be looking at a much smaller fee and a much safer option. Someone who's experienced enough, someone who can bring that sort of professionalism into the team. Because, I think Eriksen is definitely going to be leaving. Maybe McTominay leaves as well. So anyways going to be losing two midfielders. You need to be getting in players to actually replace them. So if it's going to be an option to choose from when it comes to depth options, I'll choose Amrabat. Can't hear you. You muted yourself.
Hello?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's going to be fascinating what their next steps are and who they go for. Like you say, they're obviously interested in quite a few players. They've got alternatives in each way, so it could quite literally go either way within the next 2, 3, 4, maybe even 6 weeks, especially if we manage to sell a player like Casemiro and a few others as well. Now, let's move on to the David De Gea story, because the Athletic put something out about our former Spanish goalkeeper. Now, David De Gea is nearing a return to football after being presented with several options, including one club each from Saudi Arabia, the United States and Italy. He expects to have news on his future next week. Goes on to say, David De Gea was upset with those he held responsible for his for United departure, Erik ten Hag and John Murtough. De Gea even told his inner circle he'd be happy to return to United if those two figures were no longer there. And I thought, first time he's spoken out in quite a while, Shreyas. What were your thoughts now that dust has settled? Do you think we handled that situation incorrectly for your love of your life goalkeeper?
I've always said I think the situation could definitely be handled a lot better, because we all remember how much it dragged out with De Gea. Earlier on in the window, it was being rumored that the contract is already there. There is just a bit of a hold up with him to actually just signing the extension or something. Then the news came out that he might be leaving, he might not be leaving, and it dragged out for a month and a half. And that, after that, when it got announced that United are going to be going in for Onana, that's when it got cleared up that he would be leaving, and then it got announced. So I think definitely the situation could have easily be handled a lot better than how it was. But once again, at United, and with the way we had been handling transfers with players, I'm not really surprised the way it turned out at that time. So, apart from that, when it comes to him leaving, I think it was his time. I think we had to go through a change. There were a lot of mistakes in that final season. Maybe whatever the reason for it was, but it did hamper us a lot in that season. I think he made 4 or 5 mistakes in that season that led to straight goals. I still remember that error that he made against Sevilla, one he made against West Ham as well. So I remember a lot of those, and I have loved De Gea throughout the course of his career. Like, he's been one of my favorite players in a United shirt. But I think it was his time. We needed a change. Onana did come in, and I hope that Onana can actually fill his shoes. Even he had a very tough first season. Came back quite strong in the second half of the season. I hope he continues on it as well. But with De Gea, I just think that it was his time. But from United side, it could have been handled a lot better.
Yeah, I think personally, I agree with the De Gea thing. I thought it was a shit show, but what hasn't been a shit show from top to bottom really in the past 10 years? It was just a product of that. I was surprised why no clubs came in sooner for him, because I thought he's still a top quality keeper. I don't know why no other clubs have come in for him. It's very bizarre to me that. But if he does move to another club, then I wish him all the best, absolutely. And likewise with Onana for this season, I think if he has a settled back four in front of him, Yoro, if it is Yoro, Lissandro, Dalot, and then Shaw, if you can maintain that for full season, I think you'll see the best of Onana as well in terms of playing out from the back and stuff. But obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with injuries or anything, so you can only cross your fingers in that sense, can't you? Do you know
we had like 45 or 46 different centre back combinations or back four combinations last season.
Yeah. Dalot was the only one who was fit. I think, the only one who stayed in it, because you had Onana who went off for AFCON and stuff. It was just a nightmare, absolute nightmare. And praying it isn't like that again, so we can have some form of stability at the back. Now, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it at that due to battery issues and setup issues. and it's a quick show tonight. I really, really do apologise, but I wanted to get something out there and discuss. Sorry if I missed any comments. Don't usually do this, but it was quite literally, I had to set up like a fucking It's like setting up a park on. I don't know. It's like setting up a tent in the park for a festival. It was just last minute everything. But we want to try and get some content out for you guys. So hopefully you appreciate it. Sorry it's rushed. Should be back tomorrow. The internet in my area should be back on tomorrow. So everything should be back to normal. Thank you to Shreyas for doing all the hard work behind the scenes. Really appreciate that, brother. And we will both see you guys in the next one. Yeah?
Yeah. See you all.